So welcome back. I'm back again for another day of trading, another trading recap. So yesterday I had a loss, and as you can see in the chart, the price just hit my stop loss and then continue higher and hit the place that would be my take profit. So yesterday was an unfortunate trade. We knew what the price wanted to do, but we were stopped out in the first place. So bad, but I knew where the price was going and I was right. So I can take that as a lesson, and maybe I can move my stop loss a little bit higher to the low instead of just putting my stop loss below the inverse of the gap. But was yesterday. Today we have another opportunity to see if I can find a good trade. So let's go after that. So today we have already swept. On the London session, we swept the Asian high, and we have already also swept the Asian low. So here I expect a little bit of downside at least to the London highs, and then I expect a bearish reaction. But let's see. We can also be bearish, but here I just want to see sweeps. I don't have an formed bias because we are just consolidating. So I'll just wait for a sweep, and if I see a reaction from that sweep, I might enter or not. So stick to the video. In the end of the video, I'll be back. So stay here and see you soon. And if you are liking this kind of videos, like and subscribe. So see you soon. So welcome back. I'm back again, as you can see. As you can see in the chart, I did not took a trade yet, and I really don't think that I'll put a trade either. So let's talk about that. So in the beginning of the video, I talked about the manipulations that we had above the Asian high and below the London and the Asian low. So but because we swept the Asian low after and was before the New York Open. In the beginning of the video, I was bullish because I was expecting that first we will see a sweep higher, a move higher to sweep the highs, and then we would continue going lower, maybe. But here was just a game that I was expecting just sweeps. If I saw a sweep, I would, after confirmations, I would enter because we are consolidating today, just sweeping to the sweeping sell side liquidity and buy side liquidity and and going like this. So today in the beginning you saw that we did not we gone higher respect to the 15-minute fair value gap, and then we gone higher and we were very close to sweep that London high, and I said that I wanted that sweep. If we had that sweep I would be very interested on taking shorts there, but we did not swept. I like to see a week above the high or a week below the low to confirm a sweep there. We did not, for me it was not a sweep because to be a sweep it needs to liquidate and touch stop loss. There we did not add stop loss. The people put the stop loss a little bit above the high. Not there. We did not add a sweep, so for me it was not valid to talk to think about shorts. Just a move a little bit higher, and we would add a sweep, and I would have entered a short at that first fair value gap. Would be a good trade, but we did not add that sweep. I stick to my plan. I only take trades with sweeps, high confluence sweeps. We did not add that sweep, so I did not enter. Here I'm just waiting to see if we sweep the London low, but I don't know. We swept here a little bit of lows respecting a 5 minute fair value gap, but I'm not confident taking longs here because a little bit above we have a 15-minute bearish inverse fair value gap and also a 5 minute and 15 minute bearish fair value gap. So I think the price will go a little bit higher, will mitigate that fair value gaps, and we will continue going lower. But I don't like to take shorts here either. So if I come back, it's because I found a trade. If not, I did not found. So like and subscribe, and see you Sunday.